Hello, and welcome back to the Anxiety Book Club. This is episode number 30, and it's also a video episode. So if you're watching, thanks for watching. If you're listening, thanks for listening. I'm re recording the beginning of the episode because of some technical difficulties. Um, but soon you'll see me in a different shirt in the daytime speaking to my guest, who this month is Sara Owens Woodard, a compassion teacher and psychologist. I recently took an 8-week compassion cultivation training course with her that was really awesome. Yeah, so excuse the problems with the video recording. Still getting used to this microphone setup. But anyways, thanks so much, Sara, for being here, and thank you, listener or watcher, for tuning in. Enjoy.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's fun to be together.
Totally. So I want to start with some of the real basic stuff, because we're going to use some terms that people know from just being alive, but maybe don't know in the specific way that we plan to use them. Um, so in the context in which we'll be having our conversation, what is compassion?
I think, Josh, in compassion cultivation training, we talk about compassion as being our warm hearted, caring response to suffering. And I like to talk about it as involving 4 steps because I think that can help people quite a bit. And those steps are recognizing suffering, uh, acknowledging suffering, feeling or thinking about what it would be like to be that other person, connecting to our desire to alleviate suffering, and then taking some action to alleviate that suffering.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Um, I guess the acknowledging part, right, that can be hard maybe because is that the part where you feel like feel the pain that maybe you're not trying to feel, or
I think that's the second step, Josh, what we'd call connecting with the pain or imagining what it would be like to be in the other person's shoes or literally feeling the feelings that they're feeling. I think that's what you're talking about, which we can also call empathy.
yes, yeah. So that's a good one to sort of suss out, and I took some notes about that. It seems like there is perhaps some danger in being really empathetic but not being compassionate. What are the red flags there?
Right. Right. So I think the importance of distinguishing empathy from compassion is really important nowadays with so many of us experiencing burnout. So if we stay in that step 2 of compassion, which is empathy, feeling the feelings of the other person, then we're prone to head towards burnout, depression, discouragement. So while empathy is good and natural and healthy, we don't want to stay there too long. We want to shift from that state of empathy into our desire to help relieve that suffering and then taking some action to do that.
Totally. Is it always possible to do the fourth step, the action part?
I think I think that the experts would say yes, although the action might look quite different than what we imagine an action to be. So, simply being present with someone's suffering helps alleviate that suffering. So, there's research that shows if someone is giving you shocks, administering some pain to you, and you have a loved one with you that is just in the room with you, not even touching you, your perception of pain goes down compared to having a stranger in the room. So this idea of taking an action might just simply being present with a loved one in the midst of their suffering, and just by being there, not running away, not pretending the pain suffering isn't happening, but just being present there helps to alleviate the suffering. So that's always an action we can take, whether it's on the phone or through Zoom or being physically present has a big effect.
Hmm. Um, yeah. So maybe just to back up for a little bit. So, um, the compassion cultivation training course that you teach comes out of some ancient wisdom that's now being translated and made accessible for our modern sort of Americans and other English speakers or non-English speakers. What's what's the history of this sort of curriculum or education, and how did we arrive at this point of being able to take these courses in it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, compassion cultivation training specifically was written or developed at Stanford University School of Medicine. I think it was in 2009. And it was written by Tupten Jimpa, who began his young life as a monk in Tibet, who is now a scholar. He in the West, living in Canada. So he was the principal author, along with five founding faculty members of Compassion Institute. And so it's really informed by Tibetan Buddhist practice in many ways, Josh, but also tempered by these five psychotherapists and psychologists who helped co-write the manual. So it's every week we do a dyadic practice informed by psychology. So CCT really is a unique program in that it's bringing these ancient wisdom practices to cultivate empathy and compassion and action, but it's also informed by psychology, by nonviolent communication, dyadic awareness practices, and so on.
Got it. And why were they creating this content? I mean, who needs it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So people always say to me, I'm too compassionate. I don't need compassion training. I'm too compassionate. But what they don't understand is that being too compassionate is a problem, right? So often the people that are telling me this are not taking care of themselves. And they're focused on, trying to alleviate suffering outside of themselves. But this becomes a big problem, as we know now, even culturally, because people are so burnt out. Nurses and doctors, especially during the pandemic, are at high risk to burn out. So it's more important than ever to train in compassion, which we all have naturally, but we need to get this balance between compassion going outwards for others and also compassion going towards ourselves. And this is one of the things the research shows CCT helps people do, helps people develop more of a balance between their compassion towards themselves and compassion sent outward.
Totally. Yeah, my interest in the compassion stuff was mostly because I'm not a healthcare provider, and I there's a dog in my apartment right now, but it doesn't require that much of me. It was mostly about emotion regulation and sitting with difficult emotions and just another tool to possibly because especially in like the anxiety literature, there's so much focused on like how to operationally um, live while anxiety is around and to sort of manage it, but there isn't so much information, maybe more now, about how to actually offer yourself some soothing. It seems to be missing a little bit.
Yes. And I think, um, it's so much better understood now, just in the last 15 years. Stephen Porges, if you ever get the opportunity to contact him, I think he was at Pennsylvania for a while, but he has developed this polyvagal theory that's informing now the therapies around trauma recovery and also anxiety. And he really brought to the fore what we knew earlier in attachment theory, but he's really brought out for everyone else the critical importance of being able to feel safe in our bodies. And to be able to soothe and regulate our physiological system. And that's the basis for regulating our psychological system, right? So it's always physical regulation first, and then psychological regulation. And of course, it's bi-directional as we
Hmm.
get older. With babies, you got to do the body first, and then the mental comes second. But they can be informed both directions as adults. But anyway, this critical point of being able to feel safe in our bodies when we don't feel safe, to reestablish safety, is really the basis of feeling secure.
Yeah, yeah. It's always a wonder to me that some of these really powerful tools are not more mainstream. I mean, I've never been on a therapist's couch and they've told me, you know, or taught me some tools for how to make myself calm down or feel better in this very specific way. So, yeah, so I think another thing that's interesting is, the world is waking up more to mindfulness, meditation, and on the heels of like the yoga craze, people are really starting to get interested in like sitting, you know, and meditating. But the compassion stuff, even though I know it's a part of those teachings, sometimes plays second fiddle. Um, I think I've asked you this before, if you can reach nirvana in both ways, and I think you responded yes. But can you talk a little bit about how, even when you go on a meditation retreat, maybe one of the meditations during the day is metta, and we should talk about that. But most is just this, straight breath stuff. So what's the deal there?
Mhm. I think it's a big problem, Josh, that in my opinion. I was a serious Zen practitioner for probably 15 years. By serious, I mean I lived in the Zen center in the basement, beneath the temple, the Zendo, for a couple of years, and lived next door for a couple of years. So I was really serious into it. And I tell you what, I learned very little about compassion in that 15 years. I did learn to sit with discomfort and suffering, because that's what we did, often 10 hours a day sitting with pain and discomfort. So I did learn to do that. But the compassion was it just wasn't really trained, frankly. And I think in the olden days, they just thought, oh, if you teach Zen practice, compassion will come naturally at some point. Or if you teach, other kind of meditation, compassion will come naturally with it. Well, that just wasn't the case for me. And when I took compassion cultivation training in 2015, when I heard about it in 2014 at the Mind and Life training in Boston, I was like, that's what I need. I need that training, because I've done meditation forever. And it was so profound for me because I think it was sort of this, not sort of, it was this kind of closure of healing a lot of my heart. And I think it is what it is for a lot of people that do it, Josh. They feel like they've been so unresponded to, that at a deep level, they haven't truly been seen. And if you're going to develop compassion for yourself, the first step is to see your own suffering, and to really see yourself and listen to yourself, and learn to be with that suffering. is the healing. That's the healing piece, the missing piece for so many of us. And I wasn't any different than anyone else, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That definitely resonates with me. So do you feel like and when we talk about the meta practices, those are like the heart openers and the loving kindness meditation. Do you feel like when you took CCT that stuff suddenly started to make sense, or was it your first exposure to some of those kinds of practices, or what exactly clicked for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I knew about Sharon Salzberg work and loving kindness practice, and I liked it. I didn't do much of it though before CCT. But I think what really clicked for me with CCT is, and I think this is really important for people, you don't have to meditate to practice compassion. You don't have to meditate to develop a compassionate mindset and to live your values. And so this is super important to me because the most of the people that I teach, and I teach now several hundred people a year, um, they are not meditators. They're not going to meditate. 90% of them are not interested in meditation, but 100% of them are interested in living their deepest values in a better way. And so when they connect to the compassion practices, they're like, oh, this weaves in with what I've learned, the Catholic faith that I've learned practiced my whole life, or this fits exactly with my view of what a virtuous human being should be. So it's really this true meeting place where people say, I want to live more my deepest values, and these practices help me do that. And I'm not interested in the meditation part.
Yeah, I hear you. That's interesting. But so much of the homework for the compassion cultivation training is meditation, right? So do you mean afterwards they're not interested, or
I probably, Josh, the people in my classes, and I think this is true across CCT teachers, because they've done some research at Compassion Institute, but most of the people are doing very little meditation, like formal meditation, but they are working with the phrases of loving kindness in their daily life. They are reminding themselves, so this is a moment of suffering. May I be free from fear and anger. May I find peace. These kind of, may I live with ease. All these things are really impacting them. But most of the people are not sitting down for more than 5 or 10 minutes and doing a formal meditation practice.
Okay. Yeah, so in that way, it's in my mind, I think of like MBSR or mindfulness-based stress reduction and CCT being pretty similar, um, only the content's different. But MBSR is quite focused on that daily, I think 45 minutes they at least ask you to do.
So I think it's so helpful to really pull those two apart because they're very different. So I think there's even an updated manual for CCT now. The emphasis is cultivating a compassionate mindset and being able to practice compassion in your daily life. So Tupten Jinpa, who's the principal author, he said, compassion is really about how you treat the person in front of you, you know so, and he's the one that I first heard him say, you don't have to meditate to practice compassion. So I think MBSR is really about training attention, training the mind. And in compassion training, we do start with being able to settle the mind, because anything you're going to learn, if you're going to learn how to hit a baseball or play tennis, you have to be able to focus. So we always start with settling the mind practice and breath focused awareness practice. But then the practice is all about using these phrases like, may you be free from suffering, for example. We use that phrase not to elicit an internal experience of connection, warm heartedness, goodwill. I want you to be happy and well. I want to be happy and well myself. So we use these phrases really, they train our neurobiology, right? We use these phrases to evoke an internal experience of compassion and loving kindness. And the more, the belief is with neuroscience, the more that we are having these internal states of warmth and care and concern for others and our own suffering, then the more natural that becomes as our response to anything that we're faced with throughout the day, right? So we're really training our body, our heart, our neurobiology, and then our mindset, our intellect, to move in the direction of compassion when we're faced with any challenge in our day.
Totally. Yeah.
So it's quite different than just practicing, mindful awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, it seems that like in a way the sort of mindfulness practice has really insisted on getting people to do things on their cushion and hope that it translates into their daily lives, whereas it sounds like from what you're saying the focus is really your life, and if you're into sitting, maybe you can do some of the Tonglen or the metta or whatever in preparation for going out into the world and using it. um, cool. Cool.
Yeah, I think to be clear, in CCT, we ask people to spend 20 minutes a day doing a meditation practice. But what I'm saying is the research that I'm aware of my students and other people's participants, is probably 20% of the participants are actually doing that. But the others are reporting a big impact in their life from not doing that, but just taking the mindset and the phrases into their daily life and connecting with their intention to be compassionate.
Hmm. I think if we're not careful, we'll make it sound too easy.
Yeah, well, it's not easy at all, is it? You have your own experience, but no, it's very challenging. But I think what's so uplifting about it, and this is an important piece that also I think distinguished from mindfulness, is when we act compassionately, we do get a little compassion high or a compassion lift, and we do secrete oxytocin, and we do secrete endorphins that make us feel good. So this is what we call inherently rewarding. So this is what's so wonderful about the compassion work, especially now when people are burnt out, they're tired, they're exhausted, they're losing hope. And right now, to know that if you can take this compassionate mindset and take these practices and be and act from that place, that it is energizing and rewarding, it's uplifting, and that's so important because people are overwhelmed right
Hmm.
now.
Totally. Yeah, and I have noticed in myself, especially while taking the course, but now as I continue to keep the loving kindness practices in mind when I practice that, I do have moments of feeling good when I'm wishing others well. Um, so it's a nice way to be. I guess there's a possible blend that's possible. I was listening to a talk by I think it was Joseph Goldstein, and he was talking about meeting all the objects of attention with a friendly attitude. Um, whatever shows up, like "Hi, how you doing? Thanks for being here." And so maybe that gets some of the good parts of compassion and melds them in with attention practice.
Absolutely. And you have to attend to notice suffering, right? you have to attend to notice your own suffering and the suffering of others. You have to be able to work with your attention, for sure. So they're not completely separate, but it is nice to tease them out for people, because I think compassion is what's needed so profoundly in the world. I think almost everyone would agree with that statement. But we have to practice it and cultivate it, because what happens, Josh, is, if, as you know, we lose our compassion so quickly. When someone says something rude to us, for example, or cuts us off in traffic, or if someone doesn't believe what we believe, we can lose our compassion so much. And so the reason we need to train in compassion, although we have it naturally, is that our compassion is not very stable. It's not very strong. It's underdeveloped. It goes away if we're angry or hungry or disappointed or whatever. So we train to make it more
Totally,
consistent.
totally. Or scared, I think is a big one.
Sure. Strong emotions, any strong emotions, yes, we can lose our compassion right away.
I was riding my bike this morning to work, and I took the sidewalk to avoid some red light that was in my way. And I came kind of quick around a corner where I shouldn't have been, on a bicycle. And then I heard a person say, like, "Yow, yowza," or like, "You idiot," and she was right. I was not acting appropriately, but I was glad that my initial response to her wasn't like, "You're the idiot." It was sorry. I said sorry, and I think maybe part of that could be some of the training, because it normally feels bad, when people call you a bad name.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Good for you.
uh, the old
Nice.
mind did something good there. So, there's some really great gems. So you were talking about the steps. I wrote some that have really resonated with me from class. Um, so if you're experiencing like a difficult moment, um, you can go through these 4 steps, and, one is, this is a moment of suffering, so that's sort of the acknowledgement part, and then I like this second one, all humans suffer, and that this suffering, I just thought this was such a great idea, it connects us rather than isolates us, because there's so many people out there who might be suffering with the exact same problem, that you're having at the moment. May I be kind to myself in this moment, may I give myself the compassion I need. I thought that was really great.
And those, Josh, are Kristen Neff's
Okay.
4 statements. And people can find out about her work at self-compassion.org, I think. Yeah, those are 4 very beautiful, profound statements. And we can use them for our own suffering as well, right? So, and the suffering
Right,
of
so that's
others.
another good distinction that, people who have taken, her class or know about that the compassion cultivation training is not just about self-compassion.
Yes, that's a that's a good distinction. So Kristen Neff has a great 8-week training, and that is for self compassion alone. Um, and CCT, very importantly, starts with loving kindness and compassion for a loved one, and then we turn towards ourselves, and we spend 2 weeks on loving kindness and compassion for ourselves. And then we begin to expand our compassion through common humanity, really recognizing that all humans are the same in 2 ways. We all want to be happy, we all want to avoid suffering. And then we work to expand our compassion outward from there. Um, so it's really a methodical curriculum. Really, each prior step, each subsequent step builds on the prior one. It's really, I think, goes
Mhm,
deep
and
that
and
way.
also in there's something about broccoli, if I'm remembering correctly.
That's right. That's right. So, one of the ways, I think that was Susan Fisk's research. Fiske is her last name. She was at Princeton. And she did research on how we categorize people. Our first impression, we categorize people on a warmth scale and also on a competence scale. And we can dehumanize or devalue people very quickly. And she did this experiment to help people rehumanize other people. And one of the questions in that research was, imagine this person that you've dehumanized. Ask yourself this question: does this person like broccoli? And with that question, then the person begins to imagine this human being that they've kind of dehumanized. They begin to imagine them in their kitchen or at the grocery store or at a restaurant, and they begin to see them as a human being, that has preferences. And so that was one way she found that where people could rehumanize each other.
Yeah, it's really easy to remember that one, which is nice.
So do you like broccoli?
I do. I really like it.
Good. Me too.
I found out recently that it cooks quite well in the microwave.
Oh, okay. Good to
Yeah.
know. Good to know.
Would you be interested in all in maybe telling us a little bit more about one of the practices or even leading one?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure, I could lead a short practice. Should we
Cool.
do that?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Do you have a preference, Josh, of?
Yeah, maybe let's start easy. Maybe one that's like compassion for others.
Okay.
Um,
For a loved one or something? Compassion
yeah,
for a loved one? Okay. So I always tell people the first thing you do is take a good posture. So take a posture where you feel somewhat balanced. For example, you might have your feet hip distance apart, flat on the floor. You can check with the curve of your spine in your chair and find the right angle at the curve of the bottom of your spine that lets your spine sort of naturally be upright. And check with your head and neck. So you want to find a posture that's upright but not stiff. And then you can just begin to pay attention to your breath. And for this practice, we can think of bring to mind a loved one that we have some concern about right now. Maybe they're not feeling well, recovering from COVID or in the middle of it, or experiencing a psychological stressor, trying to find a job, trying to move. So we can bring to mind a loved one and picture that loved one in front of you. And notice what you begin to feel in your body when you imagine this loved one in front of you. You might feel some warmth in your chest, some desire to reach out and connect with this person, some care for them. And so imagining this loved one and also mindful of a stressor or challenge that they're working with, you can offer these phrases for your loved one. May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from fear and anger. May you find peace. May you live with ease. So again, sensing into your body, what it feels like to offer these phrases of love and care for your loved one. We can offer these phrases again, imagining our loved one receiving the effects of these phrases as we offer them. May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from fear and anger. May you find peace. May you live with ease. And imagine your loved one feeling the effects of this practice. Checking in again with your body and noticing any warmth or care, natural compassion for your loved one, your desire to help. You can offer these phrases one last time, imagining our loved one in front of us again. May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from fear and anger. May you find peace. May you live with ease. And now you can imagine your loved one feeling happy and well. Imagine what their face and body look like, feeling happy and well. And then you can bring your attention back to your own body. Notice what the impact of this practice on your own body and mind. How do you feel, and how is your thinking as this practice comes to a close? And
Thank
then,
you.
yeah, and that concludes the practice. Yeah,
Oh, sorry for cutting you off there.
no, no worries.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
I have a question about imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Um, sometimes I have trouble keeping figures in my mind's eye. They seem to disappear, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they aren't well illustrated, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. What do you recommend in those cases?
Like imagining a loved one is hard for you.
Mm-hmm.
I would start with a picture. Yeah.
Mm,
You can have a picture and just start with the picture. And as you keep doing that practice, you will kind of memorize. It will help you memorize some details. And then you can try without the picture,
mm.
and it'll get more detailed. So that's one thing. The other thing is some people are not very visual that way, and for them, it can help them to just imagine a situation where they were with that person. Like, oh, I remember that hike I did with so and so. And so you just imagine a time when you were together to kind of feel that connection. And then you offer the phrases just from that place of connection.
Got it. Yeah, I think the picture is really good advice. It reminds me a lot of learning to draw. In the beginning, you need to have a
Sure.
picture in front of you before you can start
Sure.
illustrating correctly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I know that well, because I'm a member of a community that you're the um, ho-
Hostess, I guess.
hostess of the Pact community. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Sure. So People are busy, they're overwhelmed, they're burnt out. That's not news to anyone. So I wanted to try to deliver support for getting compassion and loving kindness practices into our daily lives that is super short and available, driven by an app. So I host this online community called PACT, which is practical application of compassion training. So people could have trained it with Kristen Neff, or they could have trained with me or many other compassion teachers, and they can join our online community and where they get daily prompts and weekly topics and monthly themes where we're really applying our loving kindness and compassion practices um, to go beyond, actually, to help us cultivate a healthy mind, really. So, um, compassion really is the basis of a healthy mind. So, I'm not the first person to say that, but I copied it from some pretty smart people.
Mm-hmm. And where can people find that online and in your work in general?
Yeah, I think the easiest is just to go to Sara, no H, SARA, at saraowenswoodard.com. Also, they could go to compassionwithstrength.com. And those will get them to the community. And also, I have a CCT class starting February 2nd, and
Mm,
also an abbreviated course, kindness and compassion course, starting February 22nd. So two quick ways to get compassion practice up and running.
totally. Yeah, and I can say from experience I really enjoyed the compassion course. Here's kind of an oddball question for you before we kind of get on our way. So, this compassion stuff, I think it's found in other mammals. Um,
Mhm.
is it
Mhm.
also in reptiles and anyone who has babies, or who else gets to do this kind of thing?
I think people say mammals,
Mhm.
Josh. I'm no expert, but I think people say mammals have empathy and compassion. They cry for each other. Um, I saw this amazing video of this. Was it a great ape? I can't remember what type of it. It was a gorilla, I think, that was had a baby that was communicating to a human mother and her baby like through the glass, and it was just clear this gorilla was trying to connect to the human baby just as she was with her gorilla infant, and so, yeah, there's no question that mammals have compassion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is that where it ends, or would, lizard mothers tend to their lizard children in
I
that?
don't think so. I think they pump out eggs and leave them. I don't know though.
Mhm.
You have to get a biologist on here but people talk about the mammalian brain, right? That our more recently developed aspect of the brain that helps us to attune to the psychology and the physiology of another in a way that's marked by caring concern.
Totally. Cool. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for your time. Is there anything we didn't cover in this 45 minutes or so that you think's worth mentioning?
The last thing I would say, Josh, is that compassion training is so hopeful and it's so grounded in science, that people that are looking for short training that will yield uplifting results can go to Compassion Institute or Compassion with Strength and find classes and really have a strategy to cultivate, happiness and warm hearted connection.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Josh.